now. Sure. And I'll leave it to you, Kate, to introduce the session and yourself, because I think you'll do a better job.
Great. Thanks so much, Melissa. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Kat, and the title of this session is Behind the Scenes of Community Engagement. And the goal of this session is to help civic leaders interested in fostering civic engagement by providing tools and strategies they can use on the ground. This is going to be a mix of theory and good practical examples, so a little bit of both. So that's me. Hi, I'm Kat Jost. Last name rhymes with toast. I am a purpose-driven technology leader. I manage portfolios of projects in public interest tech, civic tech at both Jarvis and Code for Philly. So Jarvis is my day job. I'm VP of delivery, and we are a tech consultancy. We do data science work and software engineering work for government agencies and for nonprofits and mission-driven for-profit companies, startups, a little bit of everything. And then Code for Philly, which is a nonprofit, a completely volunteer-run nonprofit organization that aligns volunteer technologists with projects that help better the city. And we are we help build technology for low or no cost. And that's my handle if you want to find me on social. Great, so building community engagement, that's what we're all here for today. I've broken it down into 3 steps, what I think about how to build community engagement. The first one is identifying goals of your organization and knowing what your goals are, and then coming up with offerings associated with those goals and strategies to get people to engage with those community offerings. So once you have your goals and the offerings you want to create, then you want to design the experience and test that experience out and iterate on it and learn from it. But before I get into each of these 3 steps, I think it's really important that we make inclusion not an afterthought and talk about inclusivity and community engagement. So I have a few tips up here, 6 tips for inclusive engagement. I'm not going to go through each one. I really encourage everyone to do your own internet research, because someone could do a whole session just on inclusive engagement. And I'm not going to attempt to do that today, but I will talk about 2 of these tips in my examples that I give today. So one of them is number 2, creating a friendly and welcoming atmosphere and a place where anyone would feel comfortable. We do this with our in-person events and our online community. And then 4, reducing barriers to participation and relationship building. Okay, so first up is identifying goals and offerings. So why are you here? And what are your organization's goals, and how might you tie those goals to ways that the community can engage? A goal at Code for Philly is to align volunteer technologists to work on tech projects together that better our city. So that's one clear goal that we have. We have technologists of all kinds, and even non-technical technologists, people who know how to do social media and other and research and data entry and things like that. So the next thing is defining community offerings. So the question here is, how are you going to, what kind of engaging opportunities can we offer your communities so that they'll want to work on, in our case, the projects, and that's our goal, is to get people to work on projects. So at Code for Philly, we have the projects themselves that people can engage with. Those are all mission-driven tech projects, and some of them are partners. Some of them are in partnership with the city, and also local nonprofits, and some of them can just be community-driven, so people can start their own project if they like. They can also revive an abandoned one from years ago. We've had plenty of people try things out and kind of fizzle out. So we also have events, and I gave 2 examples here. We have hack nights, which are in-person nights where project teams get to work together and new people get to meet and greet and eat some free pizza and hang out and have a good time. And then there's Code for Philly 101, which is our bi-monthly virtual event where we talk about, what is civic tech and what is Code for Philly and how can people get involved. And next up, we have a fellowship. For the 3rd year in a row, we're running a fellowship for underrepresented technologists, which we're really excited about. Another way for people to engage in our community. And these fellows that get chosen for the program, they work on some of the active tech projects that we have ourselves at Code for Philly. And then lastly, we have social engagement. So Slack, which is for those who are maybe not familiar, the messaging platform that people use for community engagement. And then also the Code for Philly website, which is which has links to all the projects so you can learn about them and you can see who's running them and also get involved and try to volunteer on one. Okay, so then you have your offerings, you have your goals, you have your offerings, and there's strategy. So how do we make it easy for people to engage with project teams in our example? We've done in our case at Code for Philly. So we have two examples here. One, we created a manual matching process so that when new people join Slack, which is our messaging platform, we have someone greet them, and I'll talk about this process in a little bit in one of my next slides. So we have people try to engage with people and try to match them to projects right away when they join. And then also on Hack Nights, we make it really easy for newbies to come and start working on a project right away, because we'll offer them pizza, talk about the projects, and then let them walk into rooms where project teams are currently meeting and let them sit in and see how it's done and also participate if they like. So you'll see that the two pieces of text here in bold are tying back to those tips for inclusive engagement. So creating a welcoming environment and also removing barriers to engagement. So I've talked a lot. I want to ask a question. Is there anyone here who would like to give an example of a goal and a community offering at your organization? Maybe at Code for All or another civic organization in the audience? And I can't see anybody, so you can just unmute yourself and call it out. What about at Code for All, for example, our wonderful host organization? Do you have offerings for people that you like ways to engage that you offer? I know you have a Slack, and then you have these events. Is there anything else?
I was actually going to mention these events. Ma, let me ask Ma. We have Ma here.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have the COPs, the community of practices, that we are they joined every month to a session where we have amazing speakers like you, Kat, where people can start asking questions or just trying to engage on how to build best practices around certain topics, for example, good governance, digital citizen engagement. We have an Slack community where we are always posting resources and events and just trying to spark conversations around the topics that are most important to our members and the community in general. And we mostly use social media as a way to engage on what people want to learn more about, like the code community.
Yeah,
That's
and we have
great.
other stuff as well. Like I think we've had an online facilitation workshop, sustainability workshops. We also have the support squads. Those ones, I think people quite enjoy them. I think we have the exchange program as well, Ma. So we've had a few projects that are geared towards offering a few activities for the community.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's more than a few. I love that. Thank you for those examples. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, does anybody else coming from an organization or even like a company, do you have ways for your team members or your employees or anybody to engage with the community of the company?
I think it's quite difficult because I'm working for a civic organization. For them, it's very new, working in the open, working with a community. So during COVID, it was, okay, we want to be open and transparent. And so all of a sudden, there was a place for a community manager, but they didn't have real strategy and goals. It was very hands-on learning together in how to get the community in and help with the COVID apps in this case. But now everything is a bit is a bit slowing down. And if you want to go to strategy and goals and everything, well, it's business as usual more. it's very difficult to get to get strategy in there. And actually, they want to stop community management. They just see that a temporary thing, and that's very well. I think it's a shame. And if there is community management, it's more an internal within the bigger civic Dutch ministries. It's more an internal affair. It's not an open, like in Code for NL, which I'm in more. So that's a shame, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely challenging stuff. Absolutely challenging stuff. And that's why I think it's so great that Code for All has provided the opportunity for us to come together and talk about it. I have a great quote at the end too that this is making me think of. We'll get to that in a little bit too. Thanks for sharing. Does anybody else want to share before I move on?
I guess I'm wondering if folks have ways of engaging in the community that doesn't involve Slack. I'm working with a community that has never heard of Slack. They're older folks and they don't know what Slack is. Are there other tools that people use?
Yeah, great question. Does anybody have an example of other tools they use other than Slack for, you're asking for like online community engagement?
Yeah.
So I'm part of a online community or a virtual community for solopreneurs who it's predominantly women who are 50 plus. And we found that Zoom works really well. It seems like everyone pretty much has adopted to Zoom. And so doing the Zoom sessions and having the smaller breakout sessions where people can have a chance to develop relationships and get to know each other on a more personal level has been a really good alternative to Slack for people who aren't as familiar with it.
That's great. Thank you so much for that example. And I see Sung has also added an example, email listservs in the chat. Thanks, Sung.
Yeah. The other thing I've seen be successful to the point of email listservs is Google Groups set up as email listservs. For a lot of broader and slower communities, that often works well.
Yeah, great. That makes sense. I've seen that used by a nonprofit I was on the board of, and that worked out well for us. Yeah, thanks everybody for these tips. And then, and Daisy added, in non-work context for social good groups, we found closed Facebook groups as well for 50 plus audiences. Interesting. Okay, good. Thanks for that. That's specific and helpful. All right, great. Well, these are amazing examples. I wanted to make this workshop a little bit interactive so that we could all learn from each other and not just me, because I have my own examples I'll share in a little bit. But I'd love to hear from the group. So thanks everybody for sharing. Okay, so in step 2 of the process, we're designing the experience. So you figured out what kind of offering you're going to have for your community. And now we have to design the who, what, when, where, why of it. First, I have to point out my amazing team at Code for Philly. I would be nowhere without them. They're just my ultimate dream team. I don't know how I got so lucky. So we have, this is behind the scenes of Code for Philly. We have Ollie, who's our project success lead, who is incredible and knows every single thing about every single project that we have at Code for Philly, and is the one that greets people when they join, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We have Keo, also incredible, runs our events, make sure that all the in-person and online events are running smoothly, and has the very important job of ordering the pizza, getting that in on time. Kat is our amazing, we have another Kat, yes, not just me. So we have Kat H, who's our communications lead, who just creates these beautiful social media posts for Instagram and Twitter, and does an amazing job with that. Alex is our partnerships lead, and they are currently working with or reaching out to groups in the city, different nonprofits and mutual aid groups and things like that, to try to find more projects for us to work on. And then Ann is our amazing operations lead, who keeps me sane and helps me run all the behind the scenes stuff. So I wouldn't be anywhere without them. I wanted to quickly just call out some tips. If you're working with volunteer leaders, if anybody in this space has volunteer leaders, it's probably, goes for regular leaders too, but especially for volunteer leaders. Tips I have to share are, you should know their motivation. So some people are there to contribute to a good cause. Some people are there because they want to feel like they belong somewhere. Some people are there because they're trying to move forward professionally and would love to put this on their resume to say that they worked at Code for Philly. I advise everyone to, give them ownership. So Kat is in charge of social media. She comes up with the ideas for the posts, and she figures out when the best time to post them is, and I let her own that lane. And then the next two kind of go together. So delegate, but be prepared to do the work. So working with volunteers, often volunteers drop out, their availability changes, their motivation changes, or what have you. So make sure that you're able to do the work, or at least create redundancy so you have somebody else who's also able to do the work. And then last one is meet people where they're at. So this is basically just to say, don't stress people out. Like, some people have different skill sets and some people have different motivations and levels of energy and levels of interest. So really just try to meet people where they're at. Maybe some people are really responsive and want to be responsive, and other people are better at, checking in every once in a while and organizing an event, but not being on the ground too much. So these are my tips. I don't know if this is helpful to anybody in the audience, but working with volunteers and volunteer leaders specifically. Okay, so here's one example of a community offering that we have in designing the experience, and what it looks like before what it looks like now. So this is a screenshot of our a message of a channel that says "Start Here" in our Slack community. So new members, when they join Slack, they will be greeted by a Slack bot that asks them what they're trying to get out of their experience at Code for Philly, and they get pointed to the Start Here channel, where they can browse open projects and just jump in. They can introduce themselves in the channel and get welcomed by the project lead and start hacking away with their new community. Or at least this is what we had hoped that would happen. This is like the experience that we hoped that they would have. Slack is a great opportunity for us to catch new volunteers on the internet. People find out about us and see that we have a Slack and join to see what's there. The Slack bot was added to because people were joining the Slack but not interacting in any of the channels or any of the projects. So here's what we learned when we tested and iterated on this welcoming experience in Slack. We found that people are highly unlikely to engage with the bot. So even though the bot is friendly and even has a little hand wavy emoji and is cute and everything, most people are not responding to this message, even though they're tagged personally and they just joined. And we know that they're interested in Code for Philly because they just signed up and created an account and joined. But for some reason, they were not interacting with this bot. So we had Ollie, who's shown there, who is our project success lead. We started having Ollie greet people manually, like go in there and tag them and ask them if there's anything that they'd like to work on. And we found that people were 50% more likely to respond when a human intervenes. So not every time, we're still not getting a response out of everyone, but they are also more likely to be matched with a project if Ollie reaches out to them and says, "Oh, hey, you have React skills? That's great. We have a project that's using React. Let me connect you with them." So just a little human touch really makes a difference, and that's what we found. So my next question is, do you have anybody in the audience have lessons learned from greeting new people in your communities?
So here in Code for All, and based on an experience I had at Mozilla Festival, yeah, people are respond more to human interaction, and something that we always do. We have an introduction channel, and we ask different questions each week. For example, you can share something personal from you. What are you trying to get from the community? Is there a specific project that you are currently working on, so we can know if we can ask maybe one of our founder members or our members to reach out and try and engage with them. So yeah, bots are an easy way to automatize all this, but people they like to have more a human interaction and just to know who can you reach out if you need anything from the community.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Thank you so much for that example, Mar. I am taking notes. I'm not here just to teach today. I'm here to learn as well. So thank you for that.
And Kat, another really interesting thing we've seen in Code for Philly's case with that bot is people actually replying to it will come in waves, where if people join and they see in the last couple hellos, people replied and then got engaged, a string gets going that it seems like people are hesitant to break.
Yeah, that's true. Chris here is one of the founders of Code for Philly. So thanks, Chris, for being here. Yeah, great. Thank you.
I guess I could
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
share. Oh,
Yeah, go for
sorry,
it.
you can go on, Kat.
No, please, we have time. We have plenty of time.
So I also work for the Civic Tech Innovation Network, which is based in South Africa, and we have the database, which is like it's the database of African civic tech organization projects and such. It's on our website, but coincidentally, people don't actually use it so that they can find each other or be found. They always email us. So I think there's always that human element that no matter what we put out there, they prefer to come through us to say, hey, can you connect us to these people, when clearly they already have access to the information they need. So I don't know how to word it yet, but I do think there's an element of humanness that the civic tech community appreciates, and it manifests in everything that we do. Well, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. So important, the human touch, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, does anybody else want to share before we move on? All right, cool. So this is like a little reminder slide that when we're talking about building, like purely like building from the ground up, your community engagement and your team or in your community, start with your goals. So knowing why you're there, what you're trying to do, pick offerings that actually move those goals forward and help people engaged in a way that moves your goals forward. So again, with Code for Philly, we're trying to get people to work on projects that make the city better. How do we do that? We figure out ways to get them to interact with the projects and get matched to the projects and talk to people on the projects and things like that. And strategies are your ways to how you're going to win. So, how might we get people to participate in these offerings? So things like tweaking your exactly what I think it was Mar was saying about the questions that you have every week. Try new strategies of like asking a question every week in the introductions channel, or doing different things like to get people to engage. So those are great strategies. Thanks again for sharing. And I talked mostly about virtual stuff so far. So in case anybody is trying to do in-person community building work, I'll talk a little bit about in-person event ops operations. So I have a few tips that I'd love to share just from my experience at Code for Philly, and also experience at in the past setting up events. So prep your attendees, and that means in today's not just providing a high level agenda, but also like clear vaccination requirements so that they know what to expect. But also just be sure to keep your expectations low and assume that less than 50% of the people are going to read the whole event description. And so, for example, like you're going to want to have, like, I have a speech prepared for whenever I have to bounce somebody at hack night for not having their booster or the vaccination or anything like that. So you want to prep your attendees as much as you can, but also have backup plans. Streamlining the entry experience is important. So we have a clipboard at the door. We have people's names, a space to enter the last date of their last booster or their last vaccination date. We send them upstairs. There's somebody to greet them upstairs. There's pizza awaiting when they arrive. There's 15 minutes to schmooze. So that's the next tip is to like include time for schmooze time. And also create multiple options to engage. So we have, like I mentioned earlier, there are rooms where project teams are meeting, so people can go in and watch a project team meet and join that project team if they like. There's also a space out in the lobby where people can just hang out, eat their pizza and chat. That's a picture here from one of our recent hack nights. And I also wanted to share a tip that is the coveted pizza rule that we have figured out, and we would like to share our genius with you. So if you are ever hosting an event, especially a free event, if you want to order the right amount of pizza, it's 1.5 slices for 80% of people who have RSVP'd yes, and you're welcome. Gives you just enough to have leftover pizza, but not too much that it feels wasteful, but enough for everybody. So I'd like to leave everybody with this quote, this beautiful quote from Barack Obama that says, "Change only happens when ordinary people get involved and they get engaged and they come together to demand it." And I just wanted to thank you all for spending the time to learn how to engage people in creating change in all the ways that you're doing that. So thank you. And I talked really fast. I know it's only 11:30, but okay, thank you, everybody. Questions are welcome. There's ways to get in touch with me. There's my social handle, my email address, and then there's the website, the Code for Philly website, which was actually, made from an open source tool called Ladder. And it has all the projects on there and ways to get into our Slack. And Jarvis, that's our website for the tech consultancy that I work for. We do a lot of tech for good. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Does anybody have questions or comments? Other things they'd like to share and teach us?
Well, I was thinking, what's your background how did you learn community management? Is there some trainings or things you did which were helpful?
How did I learn community management? Let me think about that. I started a company called Skilled Not Ill in 2018. It was a mental health social club, if you can imagine that. And it was, I had 1 hour workshops for small groups of people at a time. And they were fun and lighthearted and upbeat. And it was a good way for people to learn skills, practical skills that could help them with their mental health without actually it being like a dark kind of experience and going not a therapy kind of experience, but like a lighthearted kind of experience. And so I would teach these 1 hour workshops, and I would also have 1 hour events that were not mental health related. They were like make mocktails, for example, with friends, or play Cards Against Humanity, or something you could do for an hour. And I turned this into a club, so you could pay a membership and join. And that it became its own mini community, which I didn't know anything about running a business or anything about running communities, but it became its own community, and I just learned from the people and what they were interested in. And I think you really have to build relationships, personal relationships with people in your community, and understand what they're looking for, and try to find common grounds and things that they want that also match with things that you can do and that you can provide. And I really think that there are probably really good resources out there I didn't do any Googling, but I should have probably to prepare for this, but there are probably a ton of resources on how to, do community engagement, especially inclusive and community engagement, which is important. But I think for me, I just kind of learned as I went, kind of like what you were saying earlier about, it's a challenge. You kind of have to figure it out as you go. Well, at least I had to. I'm sure there are better ways to learn about it. I'm sure there are trainings.
Yeah, well, you see lots of trainings or sort of trainings coming up, but you also see people finding things out. So I was just wondering, and well, I'm the same as you. I'm like going along and learning along the way, and I'm a UXer. I'm an interaction designer by normally, so you always engage with people and everything.
Yeah.
So it's especially when in your user research and everything. So it's part of the game. But community management is kind of it's a different field. So yeah, I was just wondering.
I also learned very quickly from failure. Failure is sort of my favorite way and least favorite way to learn, but I have tried many things that have blown up in my face. Trying to for example, I didn't set community guidelines of who should belong at Skilled Not Ill in the beginning. And that meant that some people would come who had more serious mental health issues that they were looking to have resolved. And I had to try to tell them that, I'm not here for that. I'm here to just give you proactive skills and things you can try. But I'm not there to, diagnose you or anything like that. So that kind of blew up in my face a little bit. There's a lot of things that you realize along the way that you miss that you can. Hopefully it's never too late to add in. And I think people appreciate if you're trying to grow a community and you're trying to do something good, people are usually pretty patient with you.
Yeah, true. But sometimes it also feels like, Well, because there's not such a clear goals or output, and it's going along the way, you know, and it's a lot about yeah, finding things out. So it's not so goal driven. Like it's difficult to tell people what are you doing exactly, you know. I
Yeah.
think sometimes. So okay.
Yeah, that's why I start with the goal and I put the goal first in my little calculation there, is because you got to know why you're there and why is your community there in the first place? What is it you're trying to achieve? And then if you can find
I know why I'm there, but for the it's more about with the core business and everything. That's difficult. To
it's
align
definitely
with.
the challenge.
Yeah, but it's nice to try it out. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it too. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for contributing that. I love that. Definitely a challenge. Yeah, anybody else have anything that they want to share or ask?
I just wanted to share the most engaged communities that I belong to. I think there's a you know, it's very clear, like you said, of like what's the, you know, intent or who belongs, and you know what's the purpose of it. And then the second thing is that it does require action. It's not about just like bringing a group of people together and just like assuming that just because there's a lot of people there that they're just going to naturally engage with one another. There has to be something very intentional, and also consistency in that practice of, you know, whether it's like every Tuesday we're going to ask this question, or you know, we're going to ask for introductions and then get engaged. There has to be some kind of ongoing practice that's consistent, so it sets an expectation. And it allows people in the community to understand what's expected of them, and then giving them a chance to engage with the rest of the community. So just wanted to share that because I noticed that the most highly engaged, especially the Slack communities that I belong to, do all of that.
Yeah, that's that's great. The consistency is so important. Since we're a entirely volunteer run organization, consistency is a challenge because people's availability and, like I said, motivation and stuff varies. But for the most part, we can get Ollie's available to respond to everybody and be consistent about that. Some days there are lags, but like, I mean, he's amazing for doing that for every person. So yeah, I think the consistency part is huge. Yeah. And also never using @channel. @channel scares everybody. At least we found. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else? Is there anybody else currently trying to build a community from, I know we have Code for All here and a friend that was just, we were just chatting with. Is there anybody else who's trying to build community or have an existing community they're trying to build up?
Well, I'm also part of Ladies That UX. Ladies That UX Utrecht. I don't know if you know the community, but it's a global organization. Also in every city there are around the world, 85 cities around the world. There's a Ladies That UX, and what I see is that during COVID, it was very important to be there, even especially for this group, where there are more introverts, more. And consistency, like the former speaker said, it worked very well for us. And now, yeah, we have a bigger community, and we do see people are engaging more and more with us. Yeah. I do think if you are in a certain community that's not so commercial, it's quite different from or commercial. I don't know what's it called. Where it's more business-like. That's quite different from just like I just talked about Ladies That UX story. Yeah, but it's more volunteer based, so that's also another challenge.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and we all, I'm sure, all belong to communities here. Is there anything that people would like to see more community engagement wise in their, like, any of the communities that they're involved in? Like online communities or in-person ones?
I'm in a few, hey everybody, James here. I'm in a few civic tech related Slack communities. For context, I work at a public interest tech company. And something that I find very interesting in many of the civic tech Slack communities I'm in is the general lack of diversity. There are even like dedicated channels for like different segments of people. Like, so for example, I'm like a black channel, like within some of those communities, there are like channels particularly for like people, POCs, people who identify different ways that are not white cis males, which generally dominate these spaces. I wish something I would like to see more, particularly in the civic tech, like Slack spaces I'm in and in general, would be just more intentionality as it pertains to diversifying those communities, because it's like we are there, but the Slacks don't represent that, even though like we are here as in, and when I say we, I mean all types of people from all types of backgrounds.
Wow, yeah, thank you for contributing that. That is so important. And I think that isn't your organization or somewhere I saw on your LinkedIn maybe that there's going to be an inclusive engagement session?
We're doing inclusive engagement, intentional engagement, which is that session is geared more for like community engagement as it pertains to like the civic experience, like engaging community members and from a public servant perspective. But I do think some of that is relevant as it pertains to engaging any type of communities.
Yeah, I just wanted to plug that event for a moment. I don't know if you have a link to it, you can put it in the chat, but yeah, that's really, I think that's events like that are so important. Has anybody else noticed that as well? Lack of diversity in civic tech channels?
Especially code for now. It's just more. It's not. Yeah. Well, it's not so diverse as it should be, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for people who are running those communities need to be building more personal relationships with diverse groups and partnering with organizations that are serving the communities that they are trying to serve. There are a lot of interventions that I think can be done.
It seems like there's just still a lot missing in terms of like moving that ball forward, and yeah, I just wonder out loud about how like as disparate communities we could come together to try and have some more collective action around making improvements in that regard.
So I'm a little bit new to code, but I think we already have like 9 years of existence. Something that I know that at least our co-directors that are not currently here, Sophia and Lauren, have been really trying to do is to have a more diverse representation on the network, and that it also translates to our community on Slack. So obviously we are listening to everything that you're saying and taking notes on how to improve our community. As James was saying, we do have certain channels that allow us to be more engaged and more present and more close to these kind of communities. But it is true that the civic tech area and network in general needs to improve a lot on diversity and equity and inclusion. So this is something that, if possible, maybe we can work out with Mel later on. Like to have a session, like a community of practice on how all together we can improve this, because Code for All was exactly that. So, but thank you so much for like all the comments and all the suggestions, and we are learning a lot here, and I hope you are also learning with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling that out. I would love to see an event like that for Code for All to present. That would be great.
I will definitely think around that. I think the other problem that I have seen in the months that I've been here is because I'm based in Africa. I work for a network that's for African civic techies. When it comes to Code for All, the only issue that I've found is I think it's a matter of confidence, or perhaps people don't feel that they have I don't know, like people don't want to speak up or take up the opportunity as much as like maybe people that have been here longer. So I don't know if it's a matter of confidence, or they don't feel the space is open enough, or, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I have invited quite a lot of my African networks. I've invited other international people as well, but I don't know what stops them from engaging once they're in the network. So we try with the introductions, we try to invite them to the sessions. Once in a while they do. So I'm not sure what it is. It might be just something that we as Code for All really need to engage in to try to figure out what is the problem. And maybe sometimes people don't want to engage. Sometimes people just want to come and listen to other people. Maybe that's another option that we need to consider, because there are people that are like that as well. So maybe we need to have both options. So for people to just come learn if they don't want to speak, and for people to come engage if they want to. So taking all the feedback, like Maya said.
Yeah, great. I love how this conversation has turned into a brainstorm. So thank you, everybody, for contributing to that. Yeah, well, I would love to give people time back if they'd like. If there are any other questions, feel free to raise them. And you can also ask, if you think of something later, you can email me or find me on social media.
Yeah.
Or in the Code for All Slack.
Yes. Thanks for that. If there's no more question, I'm happy to close the session and save people 14 minutes. I am good at that. Just to say, our next session will be next week. It was supposed to be tomorrow, but we move it to next week. And this one is for the music lovers in the network. So the session is quite different. It's for the good governance community of practice. We have someone who's going to show us how songwriting could effectively guide individuals to create change and advocate for social change in our society. So that I'm quite curious. So hopefully we see some of you there. And we also have the support squad session there that's gonna be from Code for Canada, where they're sharing how they their revenue streams, where do they get their funding, what are the best funding methods for civic tech. So those are just coming up next week. Just wanted to share. Anyway, thank you everyone, and thank you for joining. Thanks for engaging, thanks for sharing, and thanks for Kate for holding the space. I very much appreciate you. And that's it. Thanks everyone.
So much for having me. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Thanks, Melissa and Mar.